Ever get that feeling like you just wish you had a little more control over yourself? You know what I mean? Just a little more command over your impulses or your reactions, how you handle things when things get tough.
I know exactly what you mean.
Well, you sent in a source that goes right to the heart of it. William George Jordan's Self-Control, It's Kingship and Majesty. What a title, right?
That's a powerful one. And yeah, this deep dive, it's like going deep sea diving into Jordan's thinking. He's making the case that self-control, it's not about being all stiff upper lip, turning into some kind of robot.
No.
It's really the key. It's like unlocking this richer, more purposeful life.
Absolutely. And the thing that really struck me right off the bat is just how broad Jordan sees this whole idea of self-control. It's not just about saying no to that extra slice of cake. It's about how we manage our thoughts, what we say, our whole approach to life. It's huge.
Yeah, think of it as this express lane to understanding some really fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
About mastering yourself.
Mastering yourself. Right on.
Okay, so Jordan, he kicks things off with this very vivid metaphor. He says, at any given moment, we are either a king or a slave.
Ooh, I like that.
So let's unpack that a bit. What do you think he means by that?
Well, I think it comes down to who's really calling the shots in your life. Are you consciously making choices? The ones that line up with what you truly value?
Right.
Or are you just letting yourself get swept away by whatever you're feeling right now? Those knee-jerk reactions or those immediate desires. For example, take that feeling of being totally overwhelmed by information. We've all been there, right? Jordan would say if you work on that self-control, on how you process all that information, you are taking steps. You are moving towards being the king, not the slave.
Makes sense. And it's so interesting how he brings in these historical figures to really drive the point home. He talks about Alexander the Great, this guy who conquered vast empires, right?
Yeah.
But couldn't conquer his own temper.
Oh, wow.
His excesses.
Yeah.
That's a pretty stark contrast, right?
It is.
All that external power, but no inner mastery.
That gets you thinking, doesn't it? And then Jordan touches on something I think we all feel sometimes, that little pang of envy. When you see someone who's achieved something you really admire.
Yeah.
It could be Queen Victoria's authority, Emperor William's self-assurance, or even, the physical strength of someone like Eugen Sandow.
Right.
Or the incredible spiritual fortitude of someone like Paul.
Uh-huh.
But Jordan says, hey, let's reframe that envy. Instead of just focusing on the result, the shiny finished product.
Yeah.
Let's look at the process, the journey they took to get there.
I like that. It's about how they built that strength.
Exactly.
And he even points out that so many of these people, they started from a place of weakness. Like Sandow, he was a sickly kid. And Paul, who was Saul before, and, totally different person.
Right.
And this just highlights Jordan's core belief that self-control, it's not something you're just born with.
You're not just lucky to have it.
Right. It's a muscle, and you got to work it out.
You got to train it. You got to develop it.
You got to develop it, yeah.
And that is, I think, such an encouraging message for all of us, because Jordan is very clear that self-control is something that anyone can attack. It's not about some, overnight transformation or anything like that.
No magic bullet.
No, it's a process. He talks about the long continued payment of price and those small progressive expenditures of energy. It's about consistency. Making those small, wise choices day after day.
It's like those little things add up. They compound, right?
They do. They do.
So let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about Jordan's thoughts on the present moment. This whole idea of being present. What's his take on how we should be engaging with now?
He has this really compelling idea. He says we should live each day as if it were our whole life. Like everything condensed into those 24 hours. You're not dwelling on the past.
Right.
You're not getting all anxious about the future. You're just fully present in this moment. And I think for you, someone who really values making the most of their time, this really clicks, doesn't it? It's about maximizing each moment.
It does. It's about being intentional, choosing how you spend your energy. Like Jordan, he presents each moment, each little moment as this opportunity to choose.
Right.
Are you going to let your weaknesses call the shots, or are you going to step up and choose something better, something stronger?
Yeah. It's about being the king of your moments.
Right.
So then Jordan tackles something that I think sometimes gets overlooked, but it's so powerful. The crimes of the tongue.
Oh, yeah.
This one really got me thinking about the weight of our words.
Me too.
He actually says that the tongue is the first most deadly instrument of destruction.
Wow.
Even more so than, a physical weapon.
Then a gun.
Than a gun.
That's a bold statement.
It is bold. And his logic is so compelling. He says, a gun might cause physical harm, but the tongue with unkind words, anger, gossip, lies, all that negativity,
Right.
it can completely destroy someone's reputation. It can break trust, cause deep, deep emotional wounds, the kind that last way longer than a physical injury.
Yeah, words can leave scars.
They do. And as Jordan points out, one little negative comment, it's like a spark that can start a wildfire. It can spread so fast.
That's so true, especially in today's world. Everything's so connected.
Right, it's amplified. And he's not holding back. He says a single malicious word can have like 100 accomplices.
Wow.
Because it gets repeated, embellished, twisted. And the sheer scale of the damage that he talks about, it's pretty sobering. He says the suffering caused by what he calls everyday crimes of respectability, those careless words, gossipy remarks, judgments, it actually outweighs the harm caused by traditional criminals.
It's like those little cuts that you don't even notice at first, but they can really add up.
Exactly. And then he says something really important about vulnerability. He says it doesn't matter how good someone is, how virtuous their life is. They are not immune to the damage that malice and envy can cause.
It's like everyone's got a weak spot.
He calls them these little insect parasites that can eat away at someone standing in the community.
Yeah. It's subtle but powerful.
It is. And his warning about gossip, it's so relevant today, don't you think? I mean, we hear something bad about someone, and our first thought is often, well, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right, right.
But Jordan turns that on its head. He says maybe the fire is just someone's malice, someone trying to cause harm.
It's like we have to be so careful about what we believe, what we spread.
Absolutely. So then Jordan moves on to the concept of duty.
Okay.
But he makes this really interesting distinction between duty and love. How would you explain that?
Well, it's like he sees duty as this kind of bare bones framework. He even calls it the cold, bare anatomy of righteousness. It's that thing you feel obligated to do, a requirement. Love, on the other hand, he says it's the soul of action, something that flows naturally from caring, not obligation.
I like that. Duty's like you're stuck on a track. You have to follow the rules. But love, it's like a fountain.
It's free.
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
But he's not just praising love and bashing duty. What's really insightful is his critique of blindly following duty.
Oh, yeah. He uses that classic example, the boy on the burning deck, following orders even when it doesn't make sense. He calls it an empty sacrifice.
It's tragic. And he applies this to other situations, too, like a captain going down with his ship because that's what duty dictates, even when it's pointless. Or the Roman soldier at Pompeii staying at his post out of this, what he calls morbid faithfulness. He's urging us to question, what's the spirit behind the action? Are we really doing good, or are we just going through the motions?
It's like he's saying, don't just blindly follow the rules. Think for yourself.
Right. Engage your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
But Jordan is not saying duty is bad. He's clear that when you add love to duty, that's when things get really powerful.
That's when it becomes something special.
Yeah. He uses the example of Grace Darling, this amazing woman who risked her life to save shipwrecked sailors. Her actions were driven by duty, but also by deep compassion.
So it's like love elevates duty.
It does. It transforms those obligations into opportunities, responsibilities, into joys. He even talks about how sometimes parental duty, it gets reduced to just providing the basics, food, shelter, clothes. But what's missing is that crucial element of love,
right?
The sweet sympathy, counsel, and trust, as he puts it.
Yeah, that heart connection.
Exactly. And he ties this all back to the idea of Christianity as a religion built on love, which, if you're truly living it, encompasses all those duties naturally. He uses the example of the widow's mite, a small offering given with immense love. So ultimately, Jordan is saying love should be our guiding star.
Love, not just duty.
Yes, in our personal growth and how we relate to each other.
So moving on, Jordan explores this concept of the supreme charity of the world. And his definition, it's not what you might expect. It's bigger than just giving money.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah, he sees true charity as this instinctive reaching out for justice.
It's active?
It is. It's about trying to make life easier for people, trying to smooth out the rough edges, helping them when they make a mistake, offering a hand up, being understanding when they're weak.
It's about compassion and understanding.
Yeah, and get this. He says the highest form of this charity is judge not.
Whoa.
Powerful, right?
It is.
He uses this image of perfectly balanced scales, always moving, never settling, because he says we can never fully understand another person's heart. We don't see the whole picture.
We only see what's on the surface. We don't know their story.
Right, and he calls out those people who love to find fault in others.
The proofreaders of humanity.
Yeah, they're so busy focusing on the flaws that they miss the good stuff. And he warns us about judging people just based on what we see without understanding their intentions.
It's like judging a book by its cover.
Exactly. And we all know how easy it is to misjudge people.
We've all been there.
He even cautions against seeing misfortune as some kind of punishment from God. And he reminds us how much damage we can do with careless judgments. Words have power.
They do. So let's talk about something that I know I struggle with, and I bet a lot of our listeners do too. Worry.
Oh, yeah. Big one.
Jordan doesn't sugarcoat it. He calls worry mental poison.
Straight up.
Straight up. And he goes into detail about how worry actually hurts us physically and mentally. He says it messes with our appetite, our sleep, our digestion, weakens our focus, and even makes us more likely to get sick.
It's like it wears us down.
It does. He even says that he thinks worry is a hidden cause of death in many cases.
Wow.
Sobering, right?
It is, but he makes a helpful distinction between worry and what he calls productive anxiety.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
He says anxiety is a focused response to a real problem. It's like a call to action. Worry, on the other hand, it's just this vague, often unfounded fear.
It paralyzes you.
Exactly. And Jorda's main argument against worry, it's totally useless. It can't change the past and it doesn't help you in the future. Instead of worrying, he says, focus on what you can actually do. Take action.
So true. And he points out how ironic it is that worry hits us hardest when we need a clear head the most.
It's like it sabotages us.
It does. And he gives us two really simple reasons not to worry. One, you can't do anything about it, so why worry? And two, if you can do something about it, then do it. Don't waste time worrying.
Action over worry.
Exactly. And he reminds us that sometimes good things can come out of the tough times we go through.
There's a silver lining.
There is. And the best cure for worry,
What's that?
Jordan says it's clear, simple common sense.
Good old common sense.
Love it. So then Jordan moves on to something he calls the greatness of simplicity. And this isn't about, oversimplifying things or being naive.
No, it's about clarity.
It is.
He says simplicity is about getting rid of all the unnecessary stuff in our lives. And that actually makes us more powerful.
More focused.
Yeah. He talks about how in our morals, simplicity means cutting out those bad habits and weaknesses. And he contrasts that with this constant need to be better than everyone else, which just leads to unhappiness.
Yeah, that keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah. And then he points to nature. He says nature is the ultimate example of simplicity.
Nature knows what's up.
It does. It shows us how basic, healthy habits lead to well-being, and how when we go through tough times, it often strips away all the superficial stuff and brings us back to what really matters.
Right back to the essentials.
Yeah. And he makes this interesting observation about simplicity. He says it's really hard to fake. Like signature.
Oh, interesting.
A real signature versus a forger.
I see what you mean.
And he says that truly great people, leaders, scientists, artists, they often have this quality of simplicity.
They're not bogged down by the extra stuff.
Right. And when we embrace simplicity, Jordan says life becomes wondrously beautiful.
It's like you're seeing things with fresh eyes.
Yeah. And he describes simplicity as this kind of mental and emotional foundation.
Like fertile ground.
Where bad stuff can't really take root. Deceit or selfishness. A person with a simple character, they're steady, reliable, like a compass always pointing north.
I love that. And he says cultivating this simplicity, it takes letting go of things, letting go of what's not truly important.
Detachment.
Detachment, yeah. And in the end, Jordan says simplicity isn't about being weak or ignorant.
No.
It's the mark of true greatness.
Refining things down to what really matters.
So then Jordan introduces this idea of living life over again. But here's the thing. He's talking about doing it right now, in the present.
Interesting.
He tells this story about these thirsty sailors lost at sea. They're surrounded by fresh water, but they don't realize it. And he says, we're often like those sailors. We long for a second chance, but we're surrounded by opportunities for a new beginning.
Every moment is a new beginning.
Every moment. And it's about approaching each day with intention, living each moment to the fullest. And he's clear that this focus on the now, it doesn't mean ignoring the future. It's about building a solid foundation for it, letting go of the past, letting go of the worries about the future. And remember, every single day is a chance to start fresh.
Absolutely. Now, Jordan also talks about this thing he calls syndicating our sorrows.
Okay, what's that all about?
It's about this tendency we have to dump all our problems on other people, turning our friends and family into a therapy group.
Oh yeah, I've been guilty of that.
We all have, right? He says we should try to handle our own stuff more, be more self-reliant.
Okay.
He gives some examples like complaining about not sleeping, obsessing over every little ache and pain, rehashing the same family dramas over and over.
Right, and it brings everyone down.
Exactly. He's saying we shouldn't make other people suffer because we're going through something. It's not fair to them. He says it's better to bear our burdens with grace and strength.
Quiet strength.
Yeah, and he warns against wallowing in self-pity, shutting ourselves off from life. He even talks about a vain pride of sorrow. It's like we hold on to our sadness, make it part of our identity.
And he contrasts that with how Socrates faced death, with acceptance without complaint.
Powerful example.
It is. And Jordan says it's not just about sadness. It's about negativity in general, like spreading doubt and pessimism, especially when people are trying to be hopeful. We don't need to rain on their parade with our negativity.
Right. So then Jordan gets into this really interesting concept, the margin of the other.
The margin of the other.
It's also called reserve power. And he draws these amazing parallels from nature.
Okay, tell me about this.
He talks about how nature builds in these backup systems, like we have 2 kidneys.
Right.
And how animals adapt to new environments over time, like rabbits in Australia developed longer claws to survive, and the incredible potential hidden in those simple green plants.
It's amazing how nature adapts.
It is, and Jordan says this reserve power, it's not just physical, it's mental and moral too. It's that ability to bounce back from setbacks, to tap into strength we didn't even know we had.
Like a hidden superpower.
Exactly, and he stresses the importance of ever doing your best, ever daring more.
I like that.
He's encouraging us to keep pushing, even when things are tough, even when progress is slow, because every challenge we overcome builds that reserve power.
Makes sense. And he says that we can often handle way more than we think we can.
We're stronger than we know. He describes reserve power as something that reveals itself gradually as we face new difficulties.
It's like it's always there, waiting for us to tap into it.
Yeah. And he offers this really hopeful thought. If we just keep doing our best, believing in ourselves, that inner strength, it will always be there when we need it.
That is a powerful message. So let's talk about one of the qualities that Jordan really admires, the majesty of calmness. And he's not just talking about being chill or laid back.
No, it's deeper than that. He calls calmness this rarest quality.
Rarest quality.
Yeah. It's a blend of poise, self-awareness, self-reliance, and of course, self-control.
Wow, it's a whole package.
It is. It's not about being passive. It's about having this focused power, this readiness for anything. And he points out that a calm person, they actually experience life more fully.
They're not missing anything.
No, they're just not letting things rattle them.
Okay.
And Jordan says calmness, it's developed through self-control, by choosing not to react impulsively.
Right.
Like, think of it as training. It's like building up a reserve of strength for when things get really tough. He uses this great analogy, a heron calmly facing down an eagle.
Wow.
Sometimes the heron even wins just by staying calm and focused.
That's amazing.
Right. And he says revenge, it's beneath someone who's truly calm.
They don't need to get even.
No, they rise above it. They move on with dignity.
That's true strength.
Yeah. And calmness, it becomes this refuge when we're going through loss or hardship. And it lets us stay unfazed when we see people behaving badly and seemingly getting away with it.
It's like trusting that justice will prevail in the end.
Exactly. Jordan sees calmness as the ultimate expression of virtue, like the culmination of all the good stuff.
Okay, so Jordan talks about something he calls hurry, the scourge of America. This one feels so relevant today.
It does, doesn't it?
Like it was written for us.
Yeah. He starts by looking at the story of creation as this kind of divine protest against hurry, like a reminder to slow down, to be thoughtful. He contrasts the slow, steady processes of nature with our need to rush everything.
And he says that hurry is often a sign that we're not organized, that we're impatient. He even suggests that the Tower of Babel, it crumbled because they were in such a hurry to build it.
Interesting.
And he makes a distinction between hurry and haste. He says haste has a purpose, a goal, but hurry is just about going fast for no reason. And he argues that this constant hurry, it costs us. We end up sacrificing things that are truly important, our health, our relationships, our inner peace.
It's like we're trading those things for speed.
Exactly. And he talks about how this plays out in both our work lives and our family lives. We're so busy chasing success that we forget to enjoy the present moment. He even suggests that this hurry, it can lead us to compromise our values, do things we wouldn't normally do.
To cut corners.
To cut corners, exactly.
And he's pretty critical of how education has become, in some ways, this monumental institution dedicated to hurry.
It's all about cramming information in without really understanding it or reflecting on it.
Right. He sees hurry as the enemy of calmness, dignity, and poise. And he even links it to unhealthy habits, like eating too fast, which can lead to all sorts of problems.
We're a culture of rushing through everything.
We are. But his point is that true greatness in any area of life, it takes time. We need to resist that urge to rush and cultivate calmness, a slower, more deliberate pace.
It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. So then Jordan explores the power of personal influence, and this is something we often don't think about enough.
It's subtle, but it's so important.
It is. He argues that while we might try to consciously influence others, the real impact comes from our personality, the way we carry ourselves, the vibes we give off. It's constant and it's powerful.
We're all influencing each other all the time.
All the time. He compares it to those invisible forces in nature, like heat and light. We're always radiating certain qualities, whether we realize it or not. Sympathy, cynicism, joy, negativity, and we're picking up on those same qualities from the people around us.
It's like we're all interconnected.
Yeah, and he gives examples of people who naturally radiate either positive or negative energy. And he points out how damaging insincerity can be. It erodes trust. And the key takeaway is that we can't escape this influence. We're always giving off something. So the choice is, what do we want to radiate?
What kind of energy do we want to put out into the world?
Exactly. And he reminds us that we have a responsibility to ourselves to avoid toxic people and environments. And if we want to have a positive influence, we have to live what we believe.
Walk the walk.
Walk the walk. He gives this fascinating example of how ideas can spread, tracing a line of influence from Godwin to Darwin. It's like a ripple effect. And he says even seemingly small actions can have huge, unseen consequences.
It's like the butterfly effect.
Exactly. And he ends the section by saying that we should all strive to be a source of inspiration and strength for the people around us.
That's a beautiful thought.
It is. So towards the end of the book, Jordan talks about the dignity of self-reliance, and he makes this really important point. Self-confidence without self-reliance is useless.
It's like a house without a foundation.
Yeah. He says self-reliance is about recognizing and developing our own abilities. It's about taking responsibility for our own problems and understanding that no one can do the work for us.
We have to be our own advocate.
Exactly. He stresses that we are either our own best friend or our own worst enemy. Personal effort is key. No one else can do the heavy lifting for us.
No shortcuts.
No shortcuts. And he says that true fulfillment comes from living in alignment with what we believe to be true, with our own understanding of truth.
Living authentically.
Yeah. He sees life as this constant stream of opportunities, but we have to be ready to seize them. We need to be prepared and take initiative. Even the greatest talents will be wasted without self-reliance.
It's the engine that drives us forward.
Exactly. And a self-reliant person, they focus on overcoming their own weaknesses rather than letting external obstacles hold them back.
It's about inner strength.
Yeah. He says setbacks are temporary, they're learning opportunities. And he connects personal self-reliance to the strength of a nation. A nation of self-reliant individuals is a strong nation.
Makes sense.
And he argues that self-reliance is built through action, through facing our fears and challenges head-on.
Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's about pushing ourselves to be better, not trying to be someone else or live up to someone else's standards.
It's about becoming the best version of ourselves.
Exactly.
So Jordan then talks about something that seems simple, but it's actually really profound. Doing our best at all times.
That's a good one.
It is. And he argues that even when life is complicated and confusing, even when we don't have all the answers, the path of doing our best is always clear. We shouldn't let doubt or despair paralyze us. Even when we're faced with injustice, the most important thing is to maintain our own integrity, to keep striving for excellence in everything we do.
To stay true to ourselves.
Exactly. He says that living at our best is a form of constant preparation. We're always getting ready for whatever comes next. And he believes that the most important thing education can do is help us develop good habits that become second nature.
Like building that strong foundation.
Yes. And he warns us about attributing success solely to luck.
Oh, yeah.
He emphasizes the role of hard work and dedication. You know, luck might play a part, but it's not the whole story.
There's a lot of sweat equity behind every success story.
Absolutely. And he says that failure is just one episode in our lives, not the whole series.
It's a setback, not the end.
Not the end. What matters is that we keep going to courage and determination. He says we shouldn't be held back by doubts or the need for guarantees. And dwelling on the past, on our mistakes, it only weakens us in the present.
It keeps us stuck.
It does. So he encourages us to focus on the task at hand, no matter how small it might seem, and to do it with all our heart, with a positive attitude.
It's about giving it our all.
Giving it our all, exactly. And while we can learn from the past, our energy should be focused on making the most of the present to create a better future.
So finally, Jordan talks about the royal road to happiness. And he starts by sharing Bismarck's confession that even though he achieved incredible success, he never really felt happy.
Wow.
Makes you think, right?
It does.
So Jordan defines happiness as this kind of paradox. It can exist anywhere, under any circumstances. It comes from within, and it's more about who we are than what we have.
It's an inner state of being.
Yeah, he calls it the warm glow of a heart at peace.
I love that.
And he says we are the creators of our own happiness. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we cultivate by aligning our lives with our values, with our ideas.
By living authentically.
Exactly. And he distinguishes happiness from those fleeting feelings of gratification, satisfaction, contentment, even pleasure. He says those are all temporary, incomplete.
They don't last.
They don't. He even suggests that a little bit of dissatisfaction can be a good thing. It keeps us moving forward, keeps us striving for something better, while contentment, it can make us complacent.
It can make us settle.
Right. He says true happiness is something that endures. It's connected to our conscience, to doing what we know is right. And it often comes as a result of living a life that's focused on others, not just ourselves.
It's about giving, not just taking.
Exactly. And he makes this interesting point. If we aim for something higher than our own happiness, we're more likely to find it.
That's counterintuitive.
It is, but it's like when we focus on something bigger than ourselves, happiness becomes a byproduct. And he believes that true happiness requires us to love something outside of ourselves. A person, a cause, our work, humanity.
Something that gives us meaning.
Exactly. And he says that cynics, they can never truly be happy.
They're too busy focusing on the negative.
Yeah. So Jordan lays out what he calls the royal road to happiness. It has 4 parts: concentration, conquest, and conscience.
Okay, break those down for me.
Consecration is about dedicating our lives to serving others, to pursuing noble ideals. Concentration is